Adrian Vale stood frozen in the rain, staring at his ex-wife's pregnant belly like it was a ghost come to haunt him. 6 months ago, he'd walked away from their marriage because a doctor said she couldn't have children. 6 months ago, he'd chosen his legacy over the woman he loved. Now she stood before him, carrying what looked impossible, carrying what the timing made undeniable. His child. The baby he'd destroyed everything to never have. One misdiagnosis had ended their marriage. One rainy encounter was about to blow his entire world apart. If you're hooked, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The empire Adrian Vale had built didn't announce itself with gold-plated signs or marble lobbies. It whispered through closed boardroom doors, through handshakes that moved millions, through the kind of power that made grown men check their words before speaking. At 34, Adrian had learned that real influence never shouted. It just was. He stood now at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his downtown office, watching the city pulse below him like a living organism. Chicago sprawled in every direction, and somewhere in that sprawl were the warehouses, the shipping routes, the legitimate businesses that fronted operations most people preferred not to think about. His father had taught him young. The Vale name meant something. It carried weight, it demanded respect, and it required continuation. "Mr. Vale?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your 4 o'clock is here." Adrian checked his watch, a vintage Patek Philippe that had belonged to his grandfather. "Send them in." But his mind wasn't on the meeting. It kept circling back to the conversation he'd had with Serena that morning. Actually, it hadn't been a conversation. Those had stopped weeks ago. It had been another exchange of careful words in their kitchen, both of them moving around each other like dancers who'd forgotten the steps. "I have that appointment today," she'd said, not looking at him. He'd known which appointment. They'd been to so many doctors lately that the sterile waiting rooms had started blurring together. "What time?" 2:30. "I'll try to make it." The word try had hung between them like smoke. They both knew what it meant. It meant he wouldn't be there. It meant she'd sit in another doctor's office alone, hearing whatever news there was to hear, and then she'd come home and tell him about it in that same flat voice she'd developed lately. The voice that used to laugh. Used to tease him when he got too serious. Used to whisper his name in the dark like it was something sacred. The meeting dragged. Adrian made the right noises, asked the right questions, but his attention kept fracturing. When his phone buzzed at 3:15, he knew before looking who it was. "Serena, need to talk when you get home. No emotion, no hint, just facts." His stomach twisted in a way that had nothing to do with the business deal in front of him.
But the bois chamatan? Bah.
Serena Cross. Serena Vale. Now, though the name still felt new after 2 years of marriage, sat in her car outside the medical building and tried to remember how to breathe. The doctor's words kept replaying in her head, each repetition making them more real and more impossible at the same time. "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Vale. The test results are conclusive. Your condition makes pregnancy extremely unlikely. We're looking at less than a 1% chance of natural conception." She'd nodded, asked the clinical questions, discussed options that all sounded hollow: IVF, surrogacy, adoption. Words that meant acknowledging this new reality where her body had failed at something she'd always assumed would just happen when the time came. The time had come. They'd been trying for 8 months. Long enough that the negative tests had stopped being disappointing and started being terrifying. Long enough that she'd stopped telling Adrian when she was ovulating because the scheduled intimacy had begun to feel like a performance review. Long enough that she'd known, somewhere deep in her bones, that something was wrong. Now she had confirmation. Her phone showed 2 missed calls from her mother and a text from her best friend Mira asking about lunch plans. Normal life. Continuing around her while she sat in a parking garage trying to figure out how to go home and tell her husband that the future they'd planned was never going to happen. Adrian wanted children. Not in the vague, someday way some men did. He wanted an heir. Someone to carry the Vale name, to inherit everything his family had built over 3 generations. He told her about it on their 4th date, laying out his life plans with the same methodical precision he brought to everything. Most women might have run. Serena had found it refreshingly honest. "I need to know if that's something you want too," he'd said. Because if it's not, we should probably stop this now before it gets complicated. She'd laughed. You're very romantic. I'm serious. I know, that's what I like about you. She'd taken his hand across the restaurant table. Yes, Adrian. I want children. I want a family. I want all of it. He'd relaxed then, some tension leaving his shoulders that she hadn't noticed until it was gone. Okay, good. That had been 3 years ago. Before the wedding, before the big house in Lincoln Park, before the careful dance they now performed around each other's disappointments. Serena started the car. Putting off going home wouldn't change what she had to say. Wouldn't change the look she knew she'd see in Adrian's eyes when she told him. Wouldn't change the fact that she was about to break both their hearts. Adrian got home at 7:30. Not trying to avoid conversation late, but later than he'd intended. Traffic had been hell, and he'd stopped to take a call from his father that had stretched longer than expected. Your mother wants to know when you're giving her grandchildren, Thomas Vale had said without preamble. She started making pointed comments about the neighbor's new baby. We're working on it. Working on it? You've been married 2 years, son. How complicated can it be? Adrian had bitten back about a dozen responses. His father came from a generation that didn't discuss such things, that assumed fertility was a given and any delay was purely choice. Explaining the truth would have invited opinions Adrian had no desire to hear. We're handling it, Dad. We'll handle it faster. The Vale name needs continuation. The same thing his grandfather used to say. The same weight that had been placed on Adrian's shoulders since he was old enough to understand what family legacy meant. You didn't just inherit the name. You carried it forward. You expanded it. You gave it to the next generation stronger than you found it. No pressure. Serena was in the kitchen when he came in, standing at the counter with a glass of wine. She'd changed from whatever she'd worn to the doctor into leggings and one of his old college sweatshirts. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked young, vulnerable, beautiful. Hey, he said. Hey. The silence stretched. Adrian set his briefcase down, loosened his tie. Tried to read her face and found nothing. She'd gotten good at hiding lately. They both had. So, he started. The appointment. Serena took a sip of wine, set the glass down carefully. The doctor says I can't have children. Something about my uterine lining and hormone levels. She used a lot of medical terms, but the bottom line is pretty clear. It's not going to happen naturally. The words hit him like a physical blow. Adrian had prepared himself for bad news. He'd known for weeks that something was off, that the lack of results meant something was probably wrong. But hearing it stated so flatly made it real in a way his worry hadn't. What about IVF? He asked. Treatments? She says we could try. The success rates aren't great given my specific condition, but it's possible. Very expensive, very invasive, and no guarantees. Adrian nodded slowly. His mind was already calculating. Costs weren't an issue. They had money, but the timeline, the uncertainty, the possibility of repeated failures. Or there's surrogacy, Serena continued. Adoption, other options. Other options. He heard how he sounded, flat, processing, already pulling back into the analytical headspace that helped him handle difficult situations. Okay? Okay? Something flashed in her eyes. Hurt, maybe. Anger. That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say, Serena? I'm trying to understand the situation. The situation? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what I am now? A situation to be managed? That's not what I meant. I can't give you what you want, Adrian. I can't give you the heir, the legacy, the next generation of Vales to carry on the family business. Her voice was rising now, control slipping. I know how important that is to you, how important it's always been, and I'm telling you I can't do it. Adrian felt something cold settling in his chest. We'll figure it out. Will we? She was looking at him now with an intensity that made him want to turn away. Because I'm not sure we will. I'm not sure you can accept a life that doesn't include your biological children carrying your name. You're putting words in my mouth. Am I? Look me in the eye and tell me it doesn't matter. Tell me you're okay with adoption, with raising someone else's child, with your name ending with you. He opened his mouth, closed it, because she was right, and they both knew it. Everything he'd been raised to believe, everything his father and grandfather had drilled into him about duty and legacy and bloodline. It all came crashing up against this moment, and he couldn't make the words come out. Serena's face crumpled. "That's what I thought." She left the kitchen. A moment later, he heard their bedroom door close. Not slam. That would have been easier somehow. The quiet click was worse. Adrian stood alone in the kitchen, staring at her abandoned wine glass, and felt the foundation of his marriage beginning to crack. The next 3 months were an exercise in slow-motion drowning. They didn't fight. That would have required engagement, passion, some kind of emotional connection. Instead, they performed their marriage like actors who'd forgotten their motivation. Serena went to work at the nonprofit where she managed donor relations. Adrian handled his business. They saw each other at breakfast sometimes, passed in hallways, slept in the same bed with careful space between them. Serena stopped bringing up doctors or treatments. Adrian stopped asking. The unspoken thing between them grew until it filled the house. "You should talk to her," Mira said one night over drinks. They'd known each other since college, and Mira had never been one to tiptoe around difficult topics. "Actually talk. Not whatever this silent suffering thing you're both doing." "What is there to say?" Serena stirred her martini without drinking it. "I already know how he feels." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you've decided how he feels without actually asking him. He can't even say it doesn't matter to him. I gave him the chance, Mira. He couldn't do it. Maybe because you ambushed him right after devastating news? Maybe because he needed time to process? Maybe because this is complicated and messy and doesn't have easy answers." Serena looked at her friend. "Whose side are you on?" "Yours. Always. That's why I'm telling you that giving up without fighting is not like you. The Serena I know doesn't roll over when things get hard." But Serena didn't feel like that person anymore. She felt tired, broken, like something fundamental had shifted and there was no shifting it back. Adrian, meanwhile, was having similar conversations with his business partner Marcus, though with more bourbon and less emotional vocabulary. "My old man keeps asking about grandkids," Adrian said. They were in his study, supposedly reviewing quarterly reports. "Every time I see him, like I'm failing at some basic requirement of being his son." "What does Serena say?" "We don't talk about it." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That seems healthy." "What am I supposed to say? That I'm okay with my family line ending because of some medical problem? That everything I was raised to believe about legacy and continuation doesn't matter? Is that what you believe?" Adrian didn't answer. "Look," Marcus said, "I get it. Your dad is old school. Your grandfather was old school. But this is your life, man. Your marriage. At some point, you have to decide what actually matters to you." "That's the problem. I don't know anymore." And that was the truth of it. Adrian had spent his entire life knowing exactly what he wanted, exactly what path he was on. The uncertainty was worse than the disappointment. He'd built an empire on decisiveness, on knowing his next move before his opponents knew theirs. But this? This situation had no clear strategy, no right answer. So he did what he'd always done when things got too complicated. He buried himself in work. Longer hours, more deals, more travel. Anything to avoid going home to the wife he loved but couldn't seem to reach anymore. Serena noticed. Of course she noticed. And every late night, every business trip, every time Adrian chose the office over coming home felt like confirmation of what she already believed. That without the promise of children, without the ability to give him an heir, she wasn't enough. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Adrian had been in New York for 3 days. Business, but also distance. When he walked into the house Tuesday evening, he found Serena's suitcase in the hallway. His heart stopped. "What's this?" She appeared from the bedroom, calm in a way that terrified him more than anger would have. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a while." "Serena." "We need space, Adrian, both of us. This isn't working." "So you're just leaving?" "I'm giving us time to think, to figure out what we actually want." "I know what I want. I want you." "Do you?" She looked at him with those green eyes that had first caught his attention at a charity gala 4 years ago. "Because for the last 3 months you've been treating me like a problem to be solved, or worse, like I'm not here at all." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? When's the last time you came home before 8? When's the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about schedules or logistics, When's the last time you looked at me like you used to? Adrian felt panic rising in his throat. Don't do this. We can work through this. I need to believe that. I need to see some sign that you're willing to choose us over what your family expects, over what you've always assumed your life would be. She picked up her suitcase. But right now, all I see is a man who's already decided I'm not enough. You're everything. Then prove it. She moved past him toward the door. Figure out what you actually want, Adrian. Not what your father wants. Not what you think the Vale legacy demands. What you want. And if that includes a life with me, knowing that I might never give you biological children, then we'll talk. She left. Adrian stood in the empty hallway, listening to her car pull away, and felt his carefully controlled world tilting off its axis. 2 weeks became a month became 6 weeks. They communicated through lawyers about paperwork, through brief texts about logistics. Serena stayed with her sister in Evanston. Adrian stayed in the house that felt too big, too quiet, too full of her absence. His father noticed. Where's Serena? Thomas asked at Sunday dinner. Haven't seen her in weeks. She's visiting family. For 6 weeks? We're having some issues. His mother, Catherine, set down her fork with that particular precision that meant trouble. What kind of issues? Adrian should have lied, should have deflected, but he was tired and hurt, and the bourbon he'd had before dinner had loosened his filter. The medical kind. She can't have children. The silence at the table was deafening. I see, his father said finally. And you're considering what exactly? I don't know. Adrian, Thomas's voice carried the weight of 3 generations. You have responsibilities. To this family. To the name you carry. I'm aware. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you seem to be confused about what matters. The Vale name has meant something for nearly a century. Your grandfather built an empire. I've maintained it. You're supposed to expand it and pass it on. That's not optional. My marriage isn't a business decision. Everything is a business decision when you carry our name. You think I married your mother just for love? I married her because she came from the right family, had the right background, could give me strong sons to carry on the legacy. That's what people like us do. Catherine's face had gone very still, but she said nothing. She never did when Thomas got like this. Serena is a lovely girl, his father continued, but if she can't fulfill her primary function, then you need to make hard choices. It's not cruelty. It's reality. Adrian stood up. I'm leaving. Sit down. We're not finished. We are. He grabbed his jacket. Thanks for dinner. He made it to his car before the shaking started. Anger, grief, confusion. It all hit at once. His father's words echoed in his head, mixing with Serena's, with his own doubts. Primary function. Hard choices. Legacy. Choose us. Adrian drove. Not home. Not to Serena. Just drove through the city as night fell, trying to outrun the decision he could feel closing in on him. The divorce papers arrived on a cold morning in late October. Adrian sat in his office, staring at the legal documents that would end his marriage. Serena was making it easy. She wasn't asking for much. The house, some savings, a clean break, like she just wanted to be free of him. He should sign them. He knew that. His father was right about one thing. Adrian had responsibilities. To the family business, to the legacy, to the future that required an heir to receive it. He picked up a pen. Serena had been his best friend before she was his wife. The person who called him on his bullshit, who made him laugh when he took himself too seriously, who saw past the name and the money to whatever was actually underneath. Losing her felt like losing a limb, but keeping her meant accepting a future his entire life had taught him was unacceptable. It meant being the Vale who ended the line, who failed the basic requirement of continuation, who chose personal happiness over familial duty. The pen hovered over the signature line. I need to see some sign that you're willing to choose us over what your family expects. He signed. The papers went back to the lawyers. 3 weeks later, on a gray November afternoon, Adrian Vale became a single man again. He told himself it was the right choice, the necessary choice, the only choice that made sense given who he was and what he owed to the name he carried. He almost believed it. Winter came to Chicago with a vengeance. Adrian threw himself into work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. New deals, new territories, expanding the empire the way his father wanted, the way his grandfather had demanded. If he couldn't give the Vale legacy an heir, at least he could make it stronger for whoever eventually inherited it. A cousin, maybe. Some future nephew. The victories felt hollow. He saw Serena once, accidentally, at a charity gala neither of them could skip without causing talk. She wore green. She always looked incredible in green, and smiled politely when their paths crossed. They made small talk like strangers. When he asked how she was doing, she said fine, with the same tone she might use to discuss the weather. She looked thinner. There were shadows under her eyes that makeup didn't quite hide, but she held her head high, moved through the room with grace, and didn't look back at him once. Adrian went home alone that night and got drunk in his study, staring at their wedding photo and wondering when exactly he'd become the kind of man who destroyed the best thing in his life for the sake of a name. He called her once, late, bourbon brave and aching. "Adrian?" Her voice was sleepy. "It's 2 a.m. "I made a mistake." Silence. Then, "You're drunk." Doesn't make it less true. "Yes, it does. Drunk truths aren't the same as sober choices. You made your choice, Adrian. We both did." "Serena, don't. Please. I'm trying to move forward. Don't make this harder than it already is." She hung up. He didn't call again. January brought a cold snap that froze the Chicago River and made the city feel brittle, like it might crack under the pressure of all that ice. Serena had moved into a small apartment in Wicker Park. Nothing fancy, a one-bedroom with exposed brick and radiators that clanked. But it was hers. No memories of Adrian in every room. No ghost of the future they'd planned haunting the hallways. She'd thought leaving would make things easier. Instead, it just made the grief more present. No distractions. No shared spaces to hide in. Just her and the loss and the slow work of rebuilding a life she'd never imagined living alone. Mira checked on her constantly. "You're not eating enough," her friend said, showing up with takeout and determination. "And before you tell me you're fine, I can see your collarbone through your sweater." "I'm eating." "What did you have today?" Serena tried to remember. "Coffee, some crackers." "That's not eating. That's giving up." Mira started unpacking containers. "Thai food. You're going to eat at least half of this pad Thai, or I'm not leaving." "You're bossy." "I'm right. There's a difference." They ate in silence for a while. Then Mira said, carefully, "Have you thought about what's next?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you can't just exist in this holding pattern forever. You need a plan, something to look forward to." "I have a job." "That's not a plan. That's survival." Mira studied her. "What do you want, Serena? Not what Adrian wanted. Not what you thought you'd have. What do you actually want for your life?" The question hung in the air. Serena realized she didn't have an answer. For so long, her wants had been tied up with Adrian's, with their shared future, with the life they were building together. Now that that was gone, she didn't know what she wanted anymore. "I want to not hurt anymore," she said finally. "That's all I've got right now." Mira reached across the table and took her hand. "That's a start." February arrived with the kind of false spring that made Chicagoans foolishly hopeful before winter's inevitable return. Serena woke up one morning feeling wrong. Not sick exactly, but off. Exhausted despite sleeping 9 hours. Vaguely nauseous. Tender in weird places. She ignored it for a week, then 2 weeks. Then Mira said something that stopped her cold. "Are you pregnant?" They were having coffee. Well, Mira was having coffee. Serena had ordered tea, which was strange because she lived on coffee normally. "What?" "No, that's not possible." "You look pregnant. You've got that glow thing happening, and you just turned green when the guy next to us ordered bacon." "I can't be pregnant. The doctor said." "Doctors are wrong sometimes." Mira pulled her phone out. "There's a pharmacy 2 blocks from here. We're getting a test." "This is ridiculous." But 30 minutes later, Serena was staring at 2 pink lines that shouldn't exist, then at 3 more tests that all said the same impossible thing. Her hand shook as she showed Mira the results. "Holy shit," her friend whispered. "Holy shit, you're pregnant." "I can't be." "The doctor said less than 1% chance." She said, Serena's voice broke. "Oh God, what am I going to do?" Because the timing made one thing absolutely clear. This baby, this impossible miracle, belonged to Adrian. The man who'd divorced her because she supposedly couldn't give him children. The man who'd chosen legacy over love. The man who didn't know he was about to become a father. Serena sat on the bathroom floor of her small apartment, back against the tub, staring at the 5 pregnancy tests lined up on the sink like evidence in a trial. 5 positive results. 5 impossible verdicts that contradicted everything the doctor had told her 6 months ago. Mira sat beside her, unusually quiet. "This doesn't make sense," Serena said for the 3rd time. Dr. Morrison was clear. She showed me the test results, explained the condition, said natural pregnancy was basically impossible. Apparently not impossible enough. Mira picked up one of the tests, squinted at it like maybe she'd read it wrong. "These things don't lie." "Well, they can give false positives sometimes, but all 5? That's not a malfunction. That's a baby." The word hit Serena like a fist. Baby. She was having a baby. Adrian's baby. The child they'd grieved over never having. The absence that had destroyed their marriage. "What are you going to tell him?" Mira asked. "Nothing." "Serena, I mean it. I'm not telling him." Mira turned to look at her fully. "You're carrying the man's child. You don't think he has a right to know?" "He gave up that right when he chose his precious legacy over our marriage." Serena heard the bitterness in her own voice, felt it coating her throat like bile. "He couldn't even look at me after we found out I supposedly couldn't have kids. Couldn't say it didn't matter, just pulled away bit by bit until there was nothing left." That was grief. That was cowardice. Serena pushed herself up off the floor, needing to move. "You know what he said to me? His exact words? He said, 'We'll figure it out.' Not, 'I love you regardless.' Not, 'You're more important than children.' Just, 'We'll figure it out,' like I was a business problem to solve." People say stupid things when they're in shock. For 3 months? He had 3 months to choose me, Mira. 3 months to show me that I mattered more than producing an heir. Instead, he worked later, traveled more, looked at me like I'd broken some fundamental promise. She wrapped her arms around her middle, over the place where impossible cells were dividing. And then he signed the divorce papers without even fighting. Mira was quiet for a long moment. "So what's your plan?" "I don't have one yet, but it doesn't include Adrian Vale." "That's going to be hard to pull off in the same city." "Chicago's big enough. I'll be careful." Serena moved to the sink, started gathering the tests to throw away. Evidence disposal. "I'll probably start showing in a few months. I'll tell work I'm relocating or something. Find a new place. I have some savings." "You're really going to do this alone?" "I've been alone since the divorce. This isn't that different." But it was different, and they both knew it. Being alone by choice was one thing. Being alone while growing a human being that shared DNA with the man who'd walked away, that was something else entirely. After Mira left, Serena made an appointment with a new doctor. Someone who didn't know her history, didn't know about the diagnosis that had supposedly made this impossible. She needed confirmation from someone who wasn't holding 5 drugstore tests as evidence. 3 days later, Dr. Patricia Chen looked up from the ultrasound screen with a smile that made everything terrifyingly real. "Congratulations! You're about 8 weeks along. Everything looks good so far." 8 weeks. That put conception right around mid-December, right around the time she and Adrian had signed the papers but before the divorce was actually final. One last time they'd reached for each other in the dark, both pretending it might fix something they both knew was already broken. "I was told I couldn't get pregnant," Serena said. "Another doctor ran tests, said my hormone levels and uterine lining made it basically impossible." Dr. Chen pulled up her file, reviewed the previous test results that Serena had requested be sent over. Her frown deepened as she read. "I'm not sure how to tell you this, but I think there might have been a misdiagnosis. These hormone levels are borderline yes, but not infertility level. And uterine lining can fluctuate significantly based on stress, diet, other factors. If these tests were done during a particularly stressful time, they were." Serena's voice came out hollow. "Very stressful. That could have skewed the results. Plus, every body is different. Medicine isn't absolute. We give probabilities, not certainties." Dr. Chen looked at her with something like sympathy. "I'm sorry if you made life decisions based on incomplete information." Life decisions. Like ending a marriage, like walking away from the man she loved because they both believed her body had failed at something it apparently could do just fine. Serena left the doctor's office in a daze. She sat in her car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, trying to process what she'd just learned. A misdiagnosis, a probably wrong verdict that had destroyed everything. She should tell Adrian. The rational part of her brain knew that. But the wounded part, the part that remembered how he'd looked at her after Dr. Morrison's appointment, like she'd become something other than what he'd signed up for, that part wanted him to never know. Wanted him to live with his choice, to build his empire and find some other woman who could give him the air he valued more than love, and never know that Serena had been capable all along. The petty satisfaction of that fantasy lasted about 3 seconds before guilt crushed it. She drove home, called in sick to work, and spent the rest of the day staring at her ceiling, one hand on her still flat stomach, trying to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. Adrian was in a meeting when his phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Lunch? Need to talk. They met at their usual spot, a steakhouse downtown where the booths were high-backed enough for private conversation, and the staff knew better than to interrupt. You look like hell, Marcus said by way of greeting. Good to see you too. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept? Adrian couldn't actually remember. The nights blurred together lately, hours spent in his study with whiskey and work, anything to avoid the empty bed upstairs. I sleep. Right, and I'm the Pope. Marcus signaled for the waiter, ordered for both of them out of habit. Once they were alone again, he leaned forward. You need to get your shit together, man. This thing with Serena, you're letting it destroy you. I'm fine. You're not. You're working 80-hour weeks, you've lost weight, and yesterday in the board meeting you zoned out for a full minute while Henderson was talking. People are noticing. I had a lot on my mind. You always have a lot on your mind. This is different. Marcus paused. Have you talked to her at all? There's nothing to say. There's everything to say. You love her. She loves you. You threw away your marriage over something neither of you could control, and now you're both miserable. What's the point? Adrian felt anger flash through him. The point is that I have responsibilities. To my family. To the business. To what? Some abstract concept of legacy that your father brainwashed you with? Marcus rarely got heated, but his voice was rising now. You think your grandfather would give a damn about bloodline if he could see what you've become? You're a zombie, Adrian. You won the divorce. Congratulations. You're free to find some other woman who can pop out veil babies on schedule. How's that working out for you? Shut up. Make me. Or better yet, be honest for 5 seconds. Was it worth it, losing Serena? Was it actually worth it? Adrian stared at his friend, at the challenge in his eyes, and felt something crack in his chest. No, of course it wasn't worth it. Then why the hell did you do it? Because I didn't know what else to do. The words came out louder than he'd intended. A couple at a nearby table glanced over. Adrian lowered his voice. My whole life, everything I was taught, everything I was raised to believe, it all said that continuing the family line was non-negotiable. When Serena told me she couldn't have kids, it felt like the ground disappeared. I didn't know how to be a veil without that future. So you chose the name over the woman. I chose what I knew, what I understood. It was easier than admitting that maybe everything I'd built my identity on was bullshit. Marcus sat back. Well, that's the most honest thing you've said in months. Their food arrived. They ate in silence for a while. Then Marcus asked, What are you going to do about it? Nothing. It's done. She's moved on. Has she? Or have you both just been existing in separate misery? Adrian thought about the charity gala, about how Serena had looked in that green dress, beautiful and distant, and so carefully composed, like she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. He'd wanted to cross the room, take her hand, tell her he'd made a mistake, but she'd looked through him like he was a stranger, and he'd let her walk away. Even if I wanted to fix it, I wouldn't know how. What am I supposed to say? Sorry I divorced you because you couldn't give me kids, but I've decided I can live with it after all? That's not exactly romantic. It's honest. That might be a start. She'd never take me back. You don't know that unless you try. But Adrian did know. He'd seen the look in her eyes the night she'd left with her suitcase. The look that said he'd broken something unfixable. Some betrayals didn't get second chances. He changed the subject, and Marcus let him. But the conversation haunted him for the rest of the day. Serena made it to 12 weeks before she had to tell her boss. "I'm pregnant," she said, sitting in Jennifer Park's office, trying to sound casual about upending her entire professional life. "I know the timing isn't great. Congratulations!" Jennifer's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "That's wonderful news. How are you feeling?" "Tired, nauseous, terrified." "That's normal." "Well, maybe not the terrified part. Or maybe that's normal too. I wouldn't know. I never had kids." Jennifer pulled out her calendar. "Let's talk about maternity leave. When are you due?" They spent 20 minutes working out logistics. Jennifer was supportive, pragmatic, entirely professional. It was only as Serena was leaving that her boss said carefully, "Does Adrian know?" Serena's hand froze on the door handle. "No." "Are you planning to tell him?" "I don't know yet." Jennifer nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I always thought you two were good together. I'm sorry it didn't work out." "Me too." That night, Serena lay in bed with her laptop, doing something she knew was a terrible idea, searching for Adrian's name. She'd avoided looking him up since the divorce, had blocked his social media, had done everything possible to move forward without digital breadcrumbs leading her back to him. But now, with his child growing inside her, she couldn't help herself. The first hit was a business article. Vail Enterprises expands into West Coast markets. There was a photo of Adrian at some conference, looking sharp in a suit, shaking hands with some politician. He looked thinner than she remembered. Older somehow, though it had only been 4 months. The next article was from a society page. Chicago's most eligible bachelors. Adrian was number 3 on the list. The write-up mentioned his recent divorce, his family's business empire, his estimated net worth. There was speculation about who he might be dating. Serena closed the laptop before she could fall further down that rabbit hole. She didn't care who Adrian was dating. She didn't care about his West Coast expansion or his eligible bachelor status. She cared about the fact that their baby's heart was beating inside her, and every day that passed made it harder to figure out how to tell him about it. Her sister called the next morning. "Mom told me," Lily said without preamble. "Why did I have to hear from Mom that you're pregnant? I thought we were close." "We are close. I'm still processing." "Process faster. This is huge. Have you thought about names? Are you finding out the gender? Where are you going to live? That apartment is way too small for a baby." "Lily, and what about Adrian? Does he know? Please tell me you've told him." Serena rubbed her temples where a headache was forming. "I haven't told him." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "You're joking." "I'm not." "Serena, you have to tell him. He's the father. He has a right to know." "Why does everyone keep saying that? He gave up his rights when he divorced me because he thought I couldn't have kids." "That's not how rights work. Biology doesn't care about your feelings." "My feelings?" Serena felt her temper rising. "My feelings are that the man I loved looked at me like I was defective when he found out I supposedly couldn't give him children. My feelings are that he worked himself to exhaustion rather than spend time with me. My feelings are that he signed divorce papers without a single fight. So forgive me if I'm not rushing to tell him that, surprise. The medical diagnosis was wrong, and I can give him exactly what he wanted after all." Lily was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentler. "I get it, I do. He hurt you, but this isn't just about you and him anymore. There's a baby involved, a baby who deserves to know their father, even if their father is an idiot." "I know." "So you'll tell him?" "I don't know. Maybe. Eventually." Serena sighed. "Can we talk about something else? Anything else?" They talked about Lily's job, about their mother's upcoming birthday, about mundane sister things that felt normal and safe. But after they hung up, Serena sat with the weight of the decision she was avoiding. She would have to tell Adrian. Eventually. The question was when and how, and whether she could survive seeing his face when he realized what the universe had taken from them and given back too late. March came in cold and wet. Adrian stood at his office window watching rain streak the glass and thought about the fact that it had been exactly 1 year since he'd proposed to Serena. He'd taken her to the lakefront, to the spot where they'd had their first real conversation. It had been early spring then, too, the kind of day where winter was losing its grip, but hadn't quite let go. She'd worn a blue coat, he remembered, had laughed when he got down on one knee because she thought he was joking at first. "You're serious?" she'd said, staring at the ring. "Very serious. I love you. I want to build a life with you. So, Serena Cross, will you marry me?" She'd said yes, had kissed him right there in public, something she usually avoided because she was private about affection. But in that moment, she hadn't cared who was watching. Now, a year later, that life they were supposed to build had collapsed into rubble. His phone rang. His father. "We need to talk about succession planning," Thomas said without greeting. "You're not getting any younger, and since the situation with Serena didn't work out, we need to start thinking about alternatives." Alternatives? "There are several suitable women in our circle. The Morrison's daughter just finished law school. The Chen girl, though she's a bit young, we could arrange introductions. I'm not interested in arranged introductions. This isn't about interest. It's about duty. The Vale name needs continuation, and you need to stop wallowing and start planning for that future." Adrian felt something snap. "The Vale name. That's all you care about, isn't it? Not my happiness. Not what I might actually want. Just the name. Don't be dramatic. Of course I care about your happiness. But happiness without purpose is just self-indulgence. You have responsibilities. I'm aware of my responsibilities. You've been reminding me of them my entire life." Adrian's voice was cold now, controlled. "But I'm done making decisions based on what you think the Vale legacy requires. I'm done sacrificing my life for a name. Adrian, I have to go. I have a meeting." He hung up, stood there in the silence of his office, heart pounding, and realized what he'd known for weeks but had been too afraid to admit. He'd made the wrong choice. He'd let fear and duty and his father's voice in his head convince him to walk away from the only thing that had ever really mattered. The question was whether it was too late to fix it. Marcus found him an hour later, still standing at the window. "You planning to jump?" his friend asked. "Considering my options." "Well, consider this one. I saw Serena today." Adrian's head whipped around. "Where?" "Coffee shop on Randolph. She was with her sister." Marcus paused. "She looked different." "Different how?" "I don't know. Softer, maybe? Like she'd gained a little weight. Looked healthier than last time I saw her." He studied Adrian. "You should call her." "And say what?" "That you were an idiot. That you made a mistake. That you want to try again." Marcus moved closer. "Look, I know you're scared, but the worst she can do is say no. At least then you'd know. The worst she can do is say yes and then realize I'm the same person who walked away before. That I'll disappoint her again. You might. That's what relationships are. Chances to disappoint each other and choose to stay anyway." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "But you can't spend the rest of your life wondering what if. Trust me on that." After Marcus left, Adrian pulled out his phone, stared at Serena's name in his contacts. His thumb hovered over the call button. He didn't press it, not yet. Not until he figured out what he actually wanted to say. What he could offer her that wouldn't just be empty promises and wishful thinking. Serena was 16 weeks along when she finally started showing. Not enough that strangers would notice, but enough that her regular clothes were getting uncomfortable. She stood in her bathroom in just a bra and leggings, staring at the small but definite bump, and felt the reality of it hit her all over again. There was a person in there, a tiny human with Adrian's DNA and her DNA, growing bigger every day. In about 5 more months, she'd be a mother. She'd have someone depending on her completely. The responsibility was terrifying. Her phone rang. "Mira. How's my favorite pregnant person? Currently having an existential crisis." "You?" "Sounds about right. Listen, I have a proposal. Come stay with me for a while." Serena pressed the phone against her shoulder while she pulled on a loose shirt. "Why?" "Because that apartment is depressing. You're too isolated, and I have a spare room that's just collecting junk. Plus, I make excellent scrambled eggs, which you and baby need. I can't impose. It's not imposing if I'm offering. Come on, Serena. Let someone help you." Serena felt her throat tighten. "Okay. Yes. Thank you." "Good. Start packing. I'll be there in an hour with my car." True to her word, Mira showed up 60 minutes later with coffee for herself and herbal tea for Serena. They loaded boxes into the back of Mira's SUV, and Serena tried not to think about how this was the second time in 6 months she was packing up her life and moving. "You know you'll have to tell him eventually," Mira said as they drove across the city. "The longer you wait, the harder it gets." "I know." "So when? When I figure out how to do it without falling apart." They pulled up to a red light. Mira turned to look at her. "You're allowed to fall apart. You're allowed to be angry and hurt and scared, but you can't let those feelings make your decisions for you. This baby deserves a father, and Adrian deserves to know he's going to be one, even if he was an asshole about the divorce. Especially because he was an asshole about the divorce. How do I tell him that the reason he left me doesn't exist anymore? That his precious heir is currently making me crave pickles at 3 in the morning? Serena shook her head. He'll think I'm playing some kind of game. Or worse, he'll want back in, and I'll have to figure out if I can trust him not to leave again. Those are problems for after you tell him. First step is just telling him. Serena knew she was right, but knowing and doing were different things. That night, settled into Mira's guest room, Serena pulled out her phone and typed out a message to Adrian. Deleted it, tried again, deleted it again. After the 5th attempt, she gave up and set the phone aside. Tomorrow, she told herself. She'd figure it out tomorrow. But tomorrow came and went, and then another tomorrow, and another. Weeks passed. Serena's belly grew. The baby started moving, little flutters that became kicks. She had another ultrasound, learned she was having a girl, cried in the parking lot because she was going to have a daughter, and Adrian didn't know. "This is getting ridiculous," Lily said when Serena told her about the ultrasound. "You're 20 weeks along. You're halfway done. What's your plan for when the baby actually gets here? You think you can hide a whole child from him?" "I don't know. I don't have a plan. I'm making this up as I go." "We'll make it up faster. Because sooner or later, someone's going to see you. Chicago's not that big. And when Adrian finds out from someone else instead of from you, it's going to be so much worse." Serena knew that too, but every time she thought about making the call, about saying the words "I'm pregnant" to the man who'd left her because she supposedly wasn't, her courage failed. She was a coward. She could admit that. But she was a coward who was trying to protect her heart and her daughter from a man who'd already proven he'd choose legacy over love. April brought the kind of spring weather that made Chicago tolerable. Warm sun, flowers blooming, people emerging from their winter hibernation like bears from caves. Adrian was leaving a meeting downtown when he saw her. Actually, he saw Mira first. His brain registered her familiar face across the street, processed that she was with someone, started to look away. Then the someone turned, and Adrian's entire world stopped. Serena. She wore a loose dress, something flowery and completely unlike her usual style. Her hair was longer than he remembered, pulled back in a braid. She was laughing at something Mira said, and even from across the street, Adrian could see she looked different, healthy, almost glowing. Then she shifted her stance and the dress fabric caught against her body, and Adrian saw it. The unmistakable curve of a pregnant belly. Time seemed to slow down and speed up simultaneously. His mind tried to process what he was seeing, tried to make it make sense. Pregnant. Serena was pregnant. Serena, who supposedly couldn't get pregnant, who'd been told by doctors that natural conception was impossible, was very clearly pregnant. The timing hit him like a physical blow. They'd been divorced for 5 months. Even accounting for her showing, for however far along she was, the math only worked one way. The baby was his. Adrian stood frozen on the sidewalk, traffic flowing around him, people bumping past him, and all he could do was stare at his ex-wife's pregnant belly and feel his entire understanding of the last 6 months crumble into dust. Someone jostled him hard enough that he stumbled. By the time he looked up again, Serena and Mira were gone, disappeared into the crowd of afternoon shoppers. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called Marcus. "I just saw Serena." "Okay?" "She's pregnant." Silence. Then, "Holy shit. It's mine. Has to be. The timing." Adrian couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't get past the roaring in his ears. "Where are you?" "State Street, outside the Macy's." "Stay there. I'm coming to get you." Marcus arrived 15 minutes later, found Adrian sitting on a bench, staring at nothing. "You okay?" "No." Adrian looked up at his friend. "She's having my baby. The baby we thought we couldn't have, and she didn't tell me. Maybe she just found out." "She's showing Marcus. She has to be at least 4 or 5 months along, maybe more. The betrayal of it was starting to sink in past the shock. She knew. All this time, she knew, and she didn't say anything. There might be a reason. What reason? What possible reason could justify keeping something like this from me? Adrian stood up, paced, sat back down. I have to talk to her. You need to calm down first. You're in shock. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to have a child. The exact thing I destroyed my marriage over not having. He laughed, but it came out bitter. The universe has a hell of a sense of humor. Marcus sat down next to him. What are you going to do? I don't know. I need to think. Adrian pressed his palms against his eyes. I need to understand why she didn't tell me. But even as he said it, part of him already knew. He'd walked away when he thought she couldn't give him children. He'd chosen bloodline over love, legacy over her. Why would she come back to him now with the news that she could give him exactly what he'd claimed to want? Why would she trust him with something so precious when he'd already proven he'd break her heart over it? The answer was simple. She wouldn't. And that realization hurt worse than anything else. Adrian didn't go home that night. He sat in Marcus's apartment drinking coffee because alcohol felt wrong somehow, staring at his phone like it might offer answers it didn't have. You need to call her, Marcus said for the 4th time. And say what? Hey, I accidentally saw you're pregnant with my kid. Why didn't you mention it? Something like that, yeah. Adrian set his phone down harder than necessary. She kept this from me for months. Months, Marcus. That's not an accident. That's a choice. A choice you probably drove her to make. The words hit like a slap. Adrian looked at his friend, who met his gaze without flinching. I'm just saying, Marcus continued, you don't get to be the wounded party here. You divorced her because you thought she couldn't have kids. Now she's pregnant, and instead of running back to you, she protected herself. Can you really blame her? I can blame her for lying. She didn't lie. She just didn't tell you. There's a difference. Not much of one. Marcus leaned forward. Look, you can sit here and be pissed about it, or you can accept that you created this situation and figure out how to fix it. Your call. Adrian knew he was right, hated that he was right. He'd spent months regretting the divorce, mourning the loss of Serena, wishing he'd made different choices. Now the universe had handed him proof that everything he'd believed was wrong, and instead of gratitude, all he felt was betrayal. No, that wasn't entirely true. Under the betrayal was something else. Fear, terror, actually. Because if Serena had kept this pregnancy secret, if she'd planned to raise their child without him, it meant she didn't trust him, didn't believe he'd be there, thought he'd fail her again. And the worst part was she was probably right. I need to think, Adrian said. You've been thinking for 6 hours. At some point, you need to act. But Adrian wasn't ready. Not yet. He needed to understand why she'd done this, needed to get past his own hurt enough to see her side, needed to figure out what he could possibly say that wouldn't make everything worse. He drove home at 3 a.m, the city quiet and empty, let himself into the house that still felt too big, too full of ghosts, stood in what was supposed to be the nursery. They'd picked this room together, had talked about paint colors and cribs, and felt the weight of everything he'd lost crushing down on him. His daughter was coming. His daughter. And he'd almost missed it entirely. Serena knew something was wrong the moment Mira came home. What? She asked, looking up from the couch where she'd been reading. Nothing. Just tired. You're lying. What happened? Mira set her purse down, took off her jacket. I think Adrian saw us today, downtown. Serena's blood went cold. What do you mean you think? I mean, I looked back while we were walking away and he was standing there across the street, staring, like he'd been hit by a truck. Did he see? Serena's hand went to her belly automatically. Yeah, I think he saw. For a long moment, Serena couldn't breathe. This was it, the moment she'd been dreading and avoiding and somehow hoping would never come. Adrian knew, or suspected. Which meant everything was about to change. What do I do? She whispered. You could call him, get ahead of it. And say what? The truth? Mira sat down beside her. Look, I know you're scared, but he was going to find out eventually. At least this way you control the narrative. I don't want to control anything. Serena's voice broke. I want to not be in this situation. I want the diagnosis to have been right so I never got pregnant. I want Adrian to have fought for our marriage instead of signing papers. I want a lot of things I can't have. What do you want that you can have? The question stopped her. Serena thought about it. I want my daughter to be okay, healthy, safe. I want to be a good mother, and I want... She paused. I want Adrian to want us for the right reasons, not because of bloodline or legacy or duty, just because we're us. You think he can't do that? I don't know. That's what terrifies me. Her phone rang. Both of them jumped. Serena looked at the screen, relief and disappointment warring when she saw it wasn't Adrian. It's my sister, she said, answering. Hey, Lily. Did you tell him yet? Serena closed her eyes. Hello to you too. I'm serious. Mom is driving me crazy asking about it, and I'm running out of excuses for why you're being stubborn. He saw me today, downtown. Mira thinks he saw the pregnancy. Silence. Then, oh shit. Yeah. So what are you going to do? I don't know. Wait for him to call, I guess. And if he doesn't? That was the question, wasn't it? If Adrian knew and chose not to reach out, what did that mean? That he didn't care? That he was angry? That he wanted nothing to do with a child conceived in the wreckage of their marriage? Then I'll know where I stand, Serena said. After she hung up, she and Mira sat in silence. The baby kicked, a strong jab against Serena's ribs that made her wince. She's active tonight, Mira observed. She's been active all day. I think she knows I'm stressed. Babies can sense that stuff. Serena rested both hands on her belly, feeling the movement beneath her palms. Her daughter, strong and healthy, and completely unaware of the mess her parents had made. I'm going to protect you, she whispered. Whatever happens, you're going to be okay. The baby kicked again, like she was answering. 2 days passed, then 3. Adrian didn't call. Serena found herself checking her phone constantly, jumping every time it buzzed, disappointment settling deeper each time it wasn't him. By the 4th day, she was angry. If he'd seen her, if he knew or even suspected, the least he could do was acknowledge it. The silence felt like rejection all over again. Maybe he didn't actually see, Mira suggested. Maybe I was wrong. You weren't wrong. I know you weren't. So then maybe he's processing. This is huge news, Serena. Give him a minute. But 4 days was more than a minute. 4 days was a choice. On the 5th day, Serena made a decision. I'm going to tell him, she announced at breakfast. Mira looked up from her coffee. Yeah? Yeah, I'm tired of waiting. Tired of being in limbo. If he already knows, fine. If he doesn't, then he needs to. Either way, I need to take control of this situation before it controls me. You want me to come with you? No, this is something I need to do alone. She got dressed carefully, choosing clothes that didn't hide the pregnancy but didn't advertise it either. Did her makeup. Tried to calm the shaking in her hands. She'd rehearsed what to say 100 times in her head, but all the words felt wrong. The drive to Adrian's office took 20 minutes. Serena parked in the visitor lot, stared up at the building where she'd met him for lunch countless times back when they were happy. The memory felt like another life. She made it as far as the lobby before her courage failed. The security guard looked up. Can I help you? I'm here to see Adrian Vale. Do you have an appointment? No, but I'm his... She stopped. What was she? Not his wife anymore. Tell him Serena Cross is here. He'll see me. The guard made a call, spoke quietly, hung up. His assistant says he's in meetings all morning. Would you like to schedule something? No. Serena felt anger flash through her. Tell him it's urgent. Another call. Another quiet conversation. The guard's expression shifted to something like discomfort. I'm sorry, ma'am. He's not available. Not available or not willing? The guard didn't answer, which was answer enough. Serena turned and walked out before the tears could start. She made it to her car, got inside, gripped the steering wheel hard enough that her knuckles went white. He was avoiding her, even knowing about the pregnancy, and he had to know. Mira had been right about that. He was choosing to hide behind his assistant and his meetings rather than face her. The hurt was stunning. Even after everything, some part of her had believed that Adrian would step up when it mattered. That fatherhood would be the thing that finally broke through his pride and his fear. She'd been wrong. Adrian watched from his office window as Serena got into her car and drove away. His assistant, Kelly, stood in the doorway behind him. "That was cold," she said. "I'm not ready to talk to her yet." "She's pregnant. With your baby, I'm guessing, given the timing. What exactly are you waiting to be ready for?" Adrian didn't answer. He'd spent the last 5 days in a spiral of anger and hurt and fear, and he still hadn't landed anywhere useful. Every time he thought about calling Serena, his pride got in the way. She'd kept this from him, had planned to keep it from him indefinitely. That wasn't something he could just forgive because it was convenient. Except it wasn't about convenience. It was about their daughter. The thought stopped him cold. Their daughter. He'd been so caught up in his own feelings that he'd barely processed that part. He was going to be a father to a little girl. A little girl Serena was raising alone because he'd proven himself unworthy of being part of the equation. "I screwed this up," he said aloud. "Yep." "What do I do?" Kelly came to stand beside him at the window. "You apologize, you grovel, you figure out what you actually want, and then you fight for it, in that order." "What if she won't listen?" "Then you keep trying until she does, or until she gets a restraining order. Either way, at least you'll know you tried." Adrian laughed despite himself. "You're very wise. I'm a divorced mother of 2. I know all about men being idiots." She headed for the door. "Don't wait too long, Mr. Vale. Some things can't be fixed once they're broken." After she left, Adrian pulled out his phone, looked at Serena's number. His thumb hovered over the call button just like it had 100 times in the last 5 days. This time he pressed it. The phone rang, once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, it went to voicemail. "You've reached Serena. Leave a message." Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. What could he possibly say in a voicemail that would matter? "It's me," he said finally. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but we need to talk. Please, call me back." He hung up, stared at the phone like it might ring immediately. It didn't. Serena listened to the voicemail 3 times, each playback making her angrier. "We need to talk," she repeated to Mira. "That's what he says. Not, 'I'm sorry for avoiding you.' Not, 'I saw you're pregnant, and I'm a complete asshole for not calling.' Just, 'We need to talk.' To be fair, you didn't tell him about the pregnancy. He probably doesn't know how to approach it. He had his assistant turn me away this morning. He doesn't get to play the confused party now." Mira held up her hands. "I'm not defending him. I'm just saying maybe there's a conversation worth having here." "There's nothing to say. He made his position clear when he refused to see me." But even as she said it, Serena knew she was being unfair. She'd kept the pregnancy secret for 5 months. She'd made choices that shut Adrian out. Maybe he was hurt. Maybe he was processing. Maybe he deserved a chance to actually talk before she wrote him off completely. The baby kicked, hard. "Ow!" Serena rubbed the spot. "Your timing is terrible, kid." "She's trying to tell you something," Mira said. "Yeah, that her father is an idiot and her mother isn't much better." That night, Serena lay in bed staring at her phone. The voicemail sat there waiting. She could call back, could take the first step toward whatever conversation needed to happen, could be the bigger person. Instead, she turned off the phone and tried to sleep. Adrian called again the next morning, and the morning after that. By the 3rd day of calls going to voicemail, he knew she was avoiding him deliberately. "She won't talk to me," he told Marcus. "Can you blame her?" "Yes. No. I don't know." Adrian paced his office. "I just need 5 minutes to explain." "Explain what? That you saw she was pregnant and then hid from her for a week? That's not a great opening argument." "I was processing." "For a week? While she was probably terrified you'd reject her again?" Marcus shook his head. "You're going to have to do better than that." Adrian knew he was right. Knew that calling and leaving vague voicemails wasn't enough. Knew that he needed to actually face Serena, look her in the eye, say the things that needed saying. He just didn't know what those things were yet. The problem was that anger and hurt kept getting tangled up with guilt and longing. He was furious that she'd kept the pregnancy secret, devastated that she'd thought she had to, terrified that he'd already lost his chance to be part of his daughter's life. And under all of it, buried but persistent, was the grief of everything they'd lost, and the fragile hope that maybe, somehow, they could find their way back. I'm going to her apartment, he decided. She's not there. She moved. Adrian stopped mid-pace. How do you know that? I asked around. She's staying with Mira. Do you have the address? Marcus hesitated. I do. But Adrian, showing up uninvited might not be the best move here. I'm out of moves. She won't answer my calls. What else am I supposed to do? Give her space? I gave her space, 5 days of space while I was being a coward. Now I need to fix this. Marcus sighed but pulled out his phone. I'm texting you the address. But if she calls the cops on you, I'm going to say I warned you. Adrian drove to Mira's place in the late afternoon when he figured Serena would be home from work. The building was nice, a renovated brownstone in Wicker Park with actual parking. He sat in his car for 10 minutes trying to figure out what to say. Nothing felt right. Finally, he just got out and buzzed the apartment. Yes? Mira's voice, wary. It's Adrian. I need to talk to Serena. She doesn't want to talk to you. I know, but I'm asking anyway, please. Silence. Then, wait there. 5 minutes passed. 10. Adrian was starting to think she'd just left him standing there when the door opened and Serena appeared. She looked beautiful. That was his first thought. His second was that she looked exhausted, shadows under her eyes. Face thinner than he remembered, though her belly was round and prominent under her shirt. Hi, he said. You have 5 minutes. Can I come up? No, whatever you need to say, you can say it here. They were standing on the front steps like strangers. People walked past on the sidewalk. A car honked somewhere. The whole situation felt surreal. I'm sorry, Adrian started. For not calling after I saw you, for avoiding you when you came to my office, for, he gestured vaguely. All of it. Okay. Okay? That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say, Adrian? That I forgive you? That everything's fine now? Serena's voice was tight. You saw I was pregnant, and your first instinct was to hide. Just like your first instinct when you found out I supposedly couldn't have kids was to pull away. You have a pattern, and I'm done being collateral damage from it. That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you didn't spend a week avoiding me because you didn't know how to deal with the fact that I'm pregnant with your child. Adrian couldn't, because she was right. I was hurt, he said instead. You kept this from me for months. I had to find out by accident. Don't I get to be upset about that? You get to be upset. You don't get to punish me for protecting myself. Serena's hand went to her belly. I was going to tell you, eventually. I just needed time to figure out how. How long is eventually? I don't know. Before the baby came, maybe. Maybe? The word came out harsh. You were going to maybe tell me I was going to be a father? Don't act like you have the moral high ground here. You divorced me because you thought I couldn't give you children. What was I supposed to think when I found out I was pregnant? That you'd suddenly changed your mind about what matters to you? Of course I would have. Would you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you only care now because you're getting what you wanted all along. The heir, the legacy, the bloodline continuation. Her eyes were bright with tears she wouldn't let fall. You didn't want me, Adrian. You wanted what I could give you. And when you thought I couldn't give it, you left. The truth of it hit him like a fist to the gut. That's not... I loved you. Past tense, exactly. She stepped back toward the door. Your 5 minutes are up. Serena, please. I'll have my lawyer contact you about custody arrangements. You can be as involved in her life as you want. But you and me? We're done. We've been done. She went inside. The door closed with a quiet click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Adrian stood there on the steps, the evening getting colder around him, and felt the full weight of what he'd destroyed finally settling on his shoulders. He'd thought the divorce was the worst thing, the moment his life had cracked apart. But this was worse. This was Serena looking at him with exhausted resignation instead of love. This was hearing past tense when she talked about his feelings. This was knowing he'd hurt her so badly that even the miracle of their daughter couldn't bridge the distance between them. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. How'd it go? Adrian didn't answer. He got in his car and drove home through streets that all looked the same, past people living their normal lives, and tried to figure out where exactly everything had gone so catastrophically wrong. The answer, of course, was that he knew. It had gone wrong the moment he'd let his father's voice in his head become louder than his own heart. The moment he'd chosen legacy over the woman sleeping beside him. The moment he'd signed those papers instead of fighting. And now he was going to pay for it by watching his daughter grow up from the outside, by being a part-time father to a child who deserved so much better, by living with the knowledge that he'd had everything and thrown it away. When he got home, there was a car in his driveway. His father's. "Perfect," Adrian muttered. Thomas Vale was waiting in the study, a glass of Adrian's scotch already poured. "We need to talk," his father said. "If this is about the Morrison girl again." "It's about the fact that my son is apparently going to be a father, and I had to hear about it from Catherine's book club. Martha Chen saw your ex-wife looking very pregnant and did the math." Adrian poured himself a drink. "Yeah, Serena's pregnant. With my daughter. Due in about 4 months. And you didn't think to mention this?" "I just found out last week." Thomas studied him. "The diagnosis was wrong then. Interesting. Is that all you have to say? Interesting? What do you want me to say? Congratulations? You're having a child with a woman you divorced. That's not exactly cause for celebration." Adrian felt anger rising. "That woman is Serena. And yes, I divorced her. Worst decision of my life, by the way. Thanks for all your helpful input on that. I told you what you needed to hear. You told me what you wanted me to hear. That legacy mattered more than love. That the Vale name required biological heirs. That my happiness was secondary to duty." Adrian set his glass down hard. "Well, I listened. I destroyed my marriage because of it. And now I'm going to be a father to a child whose mother can barely stand to look at me. So thank you, Dad. Your wisdom has been really valuable." Thomas's face had gone red. "Don't you dare blame me for your choices." "Why not? You blamed me for yours my whole life. Every lecture about duty and legacy and what it means to be a Vale. That was you putting your values on me. Never asking what I wanted. Never considering that maybe there were more important things than a bloodline. The bloodline is everything. The bloodline is a name. That's all it is. And I let it destroy the only thing that actually mattered." They stared at each other across the study. Thomas looked older suddenly, and for the first time Adrian could remember, uncertain. "You really love her," his father said. "I really loved her. Past tense. Because I chose what you taught me to choose, and now she's gone." Thomas was quiet for a long moment, then, "Your grandfather used to say that the hardest part of building an empire is remembering what you're building it for. I think I forgot that somewhere along the way." It was the closest thing to an apology Adrian had ever heard from his father. "I need to fix this," Adrian said. "I don't know how, but I need to try." "Then try." "But Adrian," Thomas paused, "make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Not because of the baby, not because of legacy, because you actually want her back." After his father left, Adrian sat alone in the study and asked himself that question. Did he want Serena back because she was having his child? Or because he'd never stopped loving her? The answer came easier than he expected. He'd loved her before they'd ever talked about children. Had loved her when she made him laugh, when she called him on his bullshit, when she looked at him like he was just Adrian, not the Vale heir. Had loved her in the quiet moments and the loud ones, in the easy days and the hard ones. The baby was a miracle, a second chance he didn't deserve. But Serena was the whole point. He just had to figure out how to make her believe that. The next morning, Adrian made a decision that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. He called Dr. Morrison's office and asked for copies of all the test results from Serena's infertility diagnosis. The receptionist was hesitant until he explained he was the former husband, that there was a legal matter involved, that he needed the records for his attorney. It wasn't entirely a lie. There was a legal matter. It was called custody of a child he desperately wanted to be part of raising. The records arrived by courier that afternoon. Adrian spread them across his desk and stared at numbers and medical terminology that might as well have been written in another language. He understood business, leverage, negotiation. He understood power dynamics and market forces. He didn't understand hormone levels and uterine measurements, so he called someone who did. Dr. Patricia Chen agreed to see him on short notice, probably because he offered to pay triple her consultation fee. Her office was in a medical building downtown, modern and clean, with abstract art on the walls that was supposed to be calming but just made Adrian more anxious. "Mr. Vale," she said, gesturing him into her private office. "What can I do for you?" Adrian handed her the folder of test results. "I need you to tell me if this diagnosis was wrong." Dr. Chen took the folder, settled into her chair, and began reading. Her expression shifted as she went through the pages, a small frown forming between her eyebrows. "These are from Dr. Morrison's practice," she said. "Yes, she told my ex-wife that natural pregnancy was basically impossible, less than 1% chance. And your ex-wife is currently pregnant? 24 weeks. Healthy pregnancy as far as I know." Dr. Chen read through the results again, more slowly this time. "I see. Well, I can tell you that these numbers are borderline at best. The hormone levels are on the lower end of normal, yes, but not infertility level. The uterine lining measurements..." She paused. "When were these tests done?" "November, last year." "And what was happening in your ex-wife's life at that time?" Adrian thought about it. November. That was right in the middle of the worst period of their marriage, when they'd been trying for months with no success, when every negative pregnancy test had felt like another failure, when the stress had been eating both of them alive. "She was under a lot of stress," he said quietly. "That would explain these readings. Stress can significantly impact hormone production and uterine health. If these tests were conducted during a period of high anxiety, they could absolutely show artificially low results." Dr. Chen closed the folder. "In my professional opinion, based on these numbers alone, I would never have told a patient that pregnancy was impossible. Difficult, perhaps, but not impossible." The word settled over Adrian like a heavy blanket, a misdiagnosis, an overstatement of the problem, a verdict delivered in absolute terms when it should have been delivered with caveats and hope. "So Dr. Morrison was wrong," he said. "I can't speak to Dr. Morrison's clinical judgment, but based solely on these test results, I would say the prognosis was overly pessimistic, yes." Adrian stood up, shook her hand, thanked her for her time. He made it to his car before the full weight of it hit him. Their marriage had ended because of a mistake, a doctor's overreach, a diagnosis delivered with too much certainty about something that was never certain at all. If Dr. Morrison had said difficult but possible instead of basically impossible, would everything have been different? Would they have kept trying? Would they have found other solutions? Would he have signed those papers? The answer was a knife in his chest. He sat in the parking garage and called the one person who might understand what he was feeling. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." 20 minutes later, they were sitting in Marcus's office. Adrian had laid out everything: the test results, Dr. Chen's opinion, the confirmation that Serena's infertility had been overstated, if not entirely manufactured by circumstance and stress. "So what are you going to do with this information?" Marcus asked. "I'm going to tell Serena. She deserves to know that the diagnosis was wrong, that Dr. Morrison screwed up." "And then what?" Adrian looked at his friend. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you show up with proof that the doctor was wrong. What's your endgame? You want her to feel better about getting pregnant? She already knows she can now. The test results don't change anything except confirm what her body already proved. It changes everything. Don't you see? We ended our marriage because of faulty information." "No," Marcus said firmly. "You ended your marriage because you chose to believe that faulty information was more important than your wife. You could have gotten a second opinion, could have kept trying, could have chosen adoption or surrogacy or any number of options. Instead, you walked away." The truth of it stung. "So you're saying I shouldn't tell her?" "I'm saying don't tell her unless you're prepared to own your part in what happened. The diagnosis might have been wrong, but your response to it was your choice. If you go to Serena with this information trying to shift blame to a doctor who made a mistake, she's going to see right through it." Adrian knew he was right, hated it, but knew it. "I need to apologize," he said. "Really apologize. Not just for the last week, but for all of it. For giving up. For choosing legacy over love. For making her feel like she wasn't enough. That's a start. But Adrian, words are cheap. You're going to have to show her you've changed, that you're not the same guy who walked away before." "How do I do that?" Marcus smiled slightly. "That's the question, isn't it?" Serena was at her 6-month checkup when the text came through. "Adrian, I went to see another doctor about your diagnosis, Dr. Chen at Northwestern. She says the original test results were interpreted incorrectly. You were never infertile. I'm so sorry. Serena stared at the message while Dr. Patel measured her belly and checked the baby's heartbeat. The words didn't quite process at first. Interpreted incorrectly. She'd built the last 8 months of her life around a diagnosis that was apparently wrong. Everything looks perfect, Dr. Patel said. Baby's measuring right on track. Heart rate is excellent. How are you feeling? Fine, Serena said automatically. Good. But she wasn't fine. She was reeling. If the diagnosis had been wrong, if Dr. Morrison had overstated the problem or misread the results or just made a mistake, then what did that mean? That she and Adrian had destroyed their marriage over nothing? That all the pain and grief and anger had been based on faulty information? She waited until she was back in her car to call Mira. Adrian says the infertility diagnosis was wrong. What? He got a second opinion. Apparently my test results were borderline at best, and Dr. Morrison should never have said pregnancy was impossible, just difficult. Mira was quiet for a moment. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Angry? Relieved? Confused? Serena's voice broke. We gave up, Mira. We could have kept trying or gotten other opinions or done 100 different things, but instead we just believed one doctor and let it destroy us. Hey, this is not on you. You got a medical opinion from someone you trusted. That's not your fault, isn't it? I should have questioned it. Should have pushed for more information. Should have what? Doubted a trained medical professional? Come on, Serena. You can't blame yourself for believing a doctor. But Serena did blame herself, because some part of her had known, even then, that giving up on their marriage was wrong, that there were other paths forward. She'd just been too hurt and too tired to fight for them. What does Adrian want? Mira asked. I don't know. He just sent the information. Are you going to talk to him about it? Serena looked at her phone, at Adrian's message still on the screen. I don't know that either. That evening, Lily showed up at Mira's apartment unannounced with Chinese takeout and a determined expression. We're going to talk about Adrian, she announced. I don't want to. Too bad. You're 6 months pregnant with his baby. He apparently just discovered that the whole reason you got divorced was based on bad medical information, and you're avoiding him like he has the plague. So yeah, we're talking about it. They settled on the couch with containers of lo mein and kung pao chicken. Serena picked at her food while Lily ate with the efficiency of someone who had 2 kids under 5 and had learned to consume calories quickly. He hurt me, Serena said finally, really badly. I don't know if I can get past that. I'm not saying you have to, but you also can't ignore him forever. You're having his child. Like it or not, he's going to be part of your life. I know that. I'm not trying to keep him from the baby. I told him we'd work out custody. Custody isn't the same as co-parenting. If you're going to do this, you need to figure out how to actually be in the same room as him without shutting down. Serena set down her fork. I see him and all I feel is angry. Angry that he gave up so easily. Angry that he chose his family's expectations over me. Angry that he gets to walk back into my life now because there's a baby and I'm supposed to just… What? Forgive him? Pretend it didn't happen? No one's asking you to pretend, but maybe you could try actually talking to him. Let him explain. Let him apologize properly instead of in a text message or on your front steps. What if I don't want to hear it? Then tell him that, but at least give him the chance. After Lily left, Serena sat with her phone in her hand, Adrian's message still glowing on the screen. She could respond, could acknowledge the information about the diagnosis, could open the door to a conversation she'd been avoiding for weeks. Instead, she set the phone down and went to bed. Adrian knew he needed a plan. Showing up at Serena's door again wasn't going to work. Calling wasn't working. Texting medical information apparently wasn't working either, even though he'd hoped it might at least start a dialogue. He needed something bigger, something that showed he understood what he'd done wrong and was committed to fixing it, something that proved he wasn't just interested in the baby, but in Serena herself. The idea came to him at 2 a.m. when he couldn't sleep. It was risky, possibly stupid, definitely vulnerable in a way that made his chest tight with anxiety. But it was honest, and honesty was the only thing he had left to offer. He spent the next 3 days putting it together, calling in favors, making arrangements, trying to think through every possible way it could go wrong, and preparing for those outcomes. Marcus told him he was overthinking it. Kelly told him it was romantic. His father, when Adrian made the mistake of mentioning it, told him he was being foolish. Grand gestures are for movies, Thomas said. In real life, you handle these things like adults, through lawyers and structured agreements. That's how I handled the divorce. How'd that work out? Thomas had no answer for that. On a rainy Saturday in early May, Adrian drove to Mira's building for the second time. This time, he didn't buzz the apartment. He stood on the sidewalk with a sign that said, "Serena, please come down. I need 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes." He felt like an idiot. People walking past gave him looks ranging from amused to pitying. A teenager took a photo, probably to post on social media with some caption about pathetic men. He stood there anyway. 10 minutes passed. 15. Adrian's arms were getting tired from holding the sign, and rain was starting to soak through his jacket. He was about to give up when the building door opened and Serena appeared. She was wearing leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup. She looked exhausted and beautiful and so wary it made his heart hurt. "You're getting soaked," she said. "I know. Will you talk to me? I'm talking to you now. Inside, please?" Serena hesitated, then sighed. "Fine, 5 minutes." They went up to Mira's apartment. Mira took one look at Adrian dripping rain on her floor and disappeared into her bedroom with a pointed, "I'm not here" expression. Serena sat on the couch, hands folded over her belly. Adrian stayed standing, too nervous to sit. "Your 5 minutes start now," she said. "I'm sorry." The words came out rushed. "Not just for the last few weeks, but for everything. For pulling away when you told me about the diagnosis. For working late instead of being with you. For making you feel like you weren't enough. For signing those divorce papers when I should have been fighting to keep you." Serena's expression didn't change. "Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say, Adrian? That your apology fixes everything? It doesn't. I know it doesn't. But I need you to understand that I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. And I'm not asking you to take me back or forgive me or anything else. I'm just asking you to believe that I mean it when I say I'm sorry. I believe you're sorry. That doesn't change what happened." Adrian felt panic rising. This wasn't going the way he'd hoped, and his 5 minutes were ticking away. "I love you. I've always loved you. Even when I was being a coward and hiding behind my family's expectations, I loved you." Past tense again. "You loved me. Then you stopped choosing me, which is the same as stopping loving me." "No. Present tense. I love you. Right now. Today. I loved you yesterday and the day before that and every day since we met." Serena looked at him with those green eyes that used to make him feel like he was the only person in the world. Now they just looked tired. "Love isn't enough, Adrian. You loved me and still walked away. What's different now?" "Everything. I'm different." "Are you? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear because there's a baby involved now?" The question hit him like a slap. "You think I'm only here because of the baby? Aren't you? 6 months ago, you signed divorce papers without a fight. Now there's a child coming, and suddenly you're standing in the rain with signs and declarations of love. What am I supposed to think?" "You're supposed to think that I've spent the last 6 months realizing I destroyed the best thing in my life. That I wake up every morning in an empty house that we were supposed to fill together. That I see something funny and reach for my phone to text you before I remember we don't do that anymore." His voice cracked. "The baby is a miracle. Our daughter is a gift I don't deserve. But I loved you before we ever talked about children, and I'll love you if—" He stopped. "If what?" "If you decide you don't want me in your life. If you find someone else. If you tell me to leave and never come back, I'll still love you. That's not going to change." Serena's hands tightened on her belly. "Your 5 minutes are up." "Serena, please go." Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to push harder, say more, make her understand. But he'd promised 5 minutes, and she was asking him to leave. "Okay," he said quietly. "But I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep trying, keep showing up, keep proving that I've changed, for as long as it takes." "What if it takes forever?" "Then I'll spend forever trying." He left before he could say anything else that might make things worse. Got in his car and drove away. watching Mira's building disappear in his rearview mirror. Inside the apartment, Serena sat on the couch and let the tears finally come. Mira emerged from the bedroom and sat beside her, pulling her into a hug. "He seems sincere," Mira said gently. "I know. You still love him. I know that too. So why did you send him away?" Serena pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Because loving him isn't enough. He broke my heart, Mira, shattered it. And I don't know if I can trust him not to do it again." "What would it take? For you to trust him?" "I don't know. Time, maybe. Actions instead of words, proof that he really has changed and isn't just caught up in the romance of impending fatherhood." "That's fair, but Serena, at some point you're going to have to take a risk, either on Adrian or on someone else. You can't protect yourself from heartbreak forever." "Why not? It's worked out great so far." Mira gave her a look. "You're miserable. I'm pregnant and hormonal. That's different." "It's really not." That night, Serena lay in bed feeling the baby move and thinking about Adrian standing in the rain, about the look in his eyes when he'd said he loved her, about the crack in his voice when he talked about waking up alone. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that people could change, that mistakes could be forgiven, that love could survive destruction and come back stronger. But wanting to believe and actually believing were different things. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "I know you asked me to leave, and I'm respecting that. But I need you to know something. I went to see Dr. Morrison, asked her why she was so definitive about your diagnosis when the test results were borderline. She admitted she might have been overly cautious, that she should have presented it as difficult rather than impossible. I'm not telling you this to shift blame or make excuses. I'm telling you because you deserved better care than you got, and I should have insisted on a second opinion instead of just accepting the verdict and giving up. That's on me, not her. I'm sorry." Serena read the message 3 times. Adrian had gone to Dr. Morrison, had confronted her about the diagnosis, had done the things Serena herself had been too angry and hurt to do. She typed and deleted about 5 different responses before settling on, "Thank you for doing that." His reply came immediately. "You don't have to thank me. You deserve the truth. We both did." "Yeah, we did." Serena set the phone down and closed her eyes. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even close to fixing what was broken between them. But it was something, a small acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, there was a path forward that didn't involve just co-parenting from separate corners of the city. She just had to figure out if she was brave enough to take it. The next 2 weeks fell into a strange rhythm. Adrian texted her every morning, nothing heavy, just simple messages. "Hope you slept well." "Baby moving today? Thinking of you." Serena responded sometimes, brief and careful. Other times she left him on red, and he didn't push. He also started sending things to Mira's apartment. Not gifts for the baby, which would have felt manipulative. Just small things that showed he remembered who she was. A book by her favorite author that had just come out. The brand of herbal tea she'd loved. A playlist of songs they used to listen to together. "He's trying," Mira observed after the 3rd delivery. "I know." "Is it working?" "I don't know. Maybe." What Serena didn't tell Mira was that she'd listened to the playlist 3 times while crying in the bathtub, or that she was reading the book he'd sent and finding herself remembering the way he used to read beside her in bed, their legs tangled together, or that sometimes she picked up her phone to text him something funny before remembering they weren't those people anymore. Except maybe they could be. That was the terrifying part. The possibility that if she let him back in, if she took the risk, they might actually make it work this time, or he might break her heart again, and this time she'd have a daughter watching it happen. Memorial Day weekend arrived hot and humid. Serena was 28 weeks pregnant, uncomfortable in the heat, and craving the lake breeze she used to love. Mira suggested they go to the beach, and Serena agreed before thinking through the logistics. The North Avenue beach was packed with families and couples and groups of friends enjoying the long weekend. Serena found a spot under an umbrella and tried to get comfortable in a beach chair that wasn't designed for pregnant women. "I'm going to grab us some water," Mira said. "Want anything else?" "Something cold and not healthy." "Ice cream it is." Serena closed her eyes and listened to the sounds of the beach. Children laughing, waves lapping, someone's radio playing classic rock. It was almost peaceful. "Serena?" She opened her eyes. Adrian stood there in swim trunks and a t-shirt, looking as surprised as she felt. Adrian, hi. Hi, I didn't know you'd be here. Mira's idea. I needed to get out of the apartment. He gestured to the empty chair beside her. Can I sit? Serena hesitated, then nodded. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Adrian said, You look good, healthy. I look like a beached whale. You look beautiful. Serena felt her cheeks heat, and it wasn't from the sun. Stop. I mean it. You always look beautiful. Adrian, sorry, I'll stop. He was quiet for a beat. How's she doing? The baby? Strong, active. She kept me up half the night kicking. Adrian's face lit up in a way that made Serena's chest ache. Yeah? That's good, right? That she's active? According to my doctor, it's very good, means she's healthy. Have you thought about name? A few. Nothing decided yet. Adrian looked like he wanted to ask if he could be part of that decision, but he held back. Serena appreciated the restraint even as part of her wished he'd just say it. I saw Marcus last week, she said, changing the subject. At the coffee shop downtown. He said you're cutting back on work hours. Yeah, I've been thinking about what actually matters. Turns out running an empire doesn't mean much if you're doing it alone. That's very philosophical of you. I'm a changed man. He said it lightly, but there was something serious underneath. Serena studied him. He did look different. Lighter, somehow, despite the worry in his eyes, like he'd put down a weight he'd been carrying. What are you doing here, she asked. At the beach, I mean. Marcus insisted I needed sun and fresh air, said I was turning into a vampire from all the time in my office. Adrian smiled slightly. Guess he was right. This is nice. It is. They watched the lake together, not talking, just existing in the same space. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it wasn't terrible either. Progress, maybe. Or just a moment of truce. Mira returned with ice cream and stopped short when she saw Adrian. Oh, hey. Hey, Mira. She handed Serena her ice cream and gestured vaguely down the beach. Be over there. Yell if you need me. After she left, Adrian said, She's protective of you. She's a good friend. I'm glad you have her. I hated thinking of you going through this alone. Serena licked her ice cream, buying time to figure out how to respond. I wasn't completely alone. I had Mira, my sister, my mom, a whole support system. But not me. No, not you. That's my fault. I know that. I know you know. Serena sighed. I don't want to fight, Adrian. Not today. Can we just exist? For a little while? Yeah, we can do that. So they did. They sat under the umbrella, Adrian occasionally making comments about the people around them, Serena responding or not, depending on her mood. At some point, he bought them both lemonade. When Serena struggled to get out of the beach chair, he helped her up without making a big deal about it. It felt almost normal, like maybe they could figure out how to be in each other's orbit without everything being weighted with history and hurt. When Mira came back an hour later, Adrian took the hint and said his goodbyes. Thank you, he said to Serena, for letting me sit with you. It was just sitting. It was more than that, at least to me. He left before she could respond. Serena watched him walk away across the sand and felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness exactly, not trust, but something softer than the anger she'd been holding. You okay? Mira asked. I think so, yeah. He's really trying. I know. Are you going to let him back in? Serena put her hand on her belly, feeling the baby shift and settle. I don't know yet, but maybe I'm starting to think about it. That night she texted Adrian. Thanks for the lemonade. His response came quickly. Anytime. Really, anytime you want lemonade or anything else, just ask. Serena smiled despite herself. I'll keep that in mind. Good. Sleep well, Serena. You too. It was a small exchange, nothing earth-shattering. But as Serena drifted off to sleep, she thought that maybe small was exactly what they needed. No grand gestures or big declarations. Just small moments of being decent to each other, building up slowly until maybe, possibly, they could find their way to something more. Or maybe she was being naive. Maybe Adrian would let her down again. Maybe this tentative peace would crumble the first time things got hard. But for the first time in months, Serena found herself willing to consider that maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk to find out. The small moments accumulated over the next month like interest in a savings account, building towards something Serena wasn't ready to name yet. Adrian texted her most mornings. Sometimes she responded, sometimes she didn't. He never complained about the silence, never demanded more than she was willing to give. He showed up at her 30-week appointment because she'd mentioned it in passing and he'd asked if he could come. Serena had said yes before she could talk herself out of it. They sat in the waiting room, not quite touching, tension humming between them that was equal parts anxiety and something else. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. When Dr. Patel called her back, Adrian stood automatically. "You can come," Serena said. "If you want." The relief on his face was immediate. "Yeah, I want." They followed the doctor into the exam room. Serena settled onto the table while Dr. Patel prepped the ultrasound equipment. Adrian stood off to the side, hands in his pockets, looking like he didn't know what to do with himself. "First time, Dad?" Dr. Patel asked with a knowing smile. "Something like that," Adrian said. The gel was cold against Serena's belly. The ultrasound wand pressed down, and then there she was on the screen, their daughter, curled and perfect, her tiny heart beating strong and steady. Serena heard Adrian's breath catch. "Everything looks great," Dr. Patel narrated, moving the wand around. "Good size, good position. Heart rate is excellent. She's measuring right on track for 30 weeks. "She's beautiful," Adrian whispered. Serena glanced at him. He was staring at the screen like it was showing him something miraculous, which she supposed it was. His eyes were bright with tears he was trying not to let fall. "You can come closer," Dr. Patel said gently. "Dad, you want to see better?" Adrian moved to Serena's side. His hand hovered near hers on the table, not quite touching. Serena made the decision for both of them and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers immediately, holding on like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. They watched their daughter together, this tiny person they'd created in what felt like another lifetime. Serena felt the baby kick, saw the movement on the screen at the same time. "Did you feel that?" she asked. "No, what?" Serena guided his free hand to her belly, placing it where the kicks were strongest. The baby obliged with another solid thump. Adrian's expression transformed. Wonder, joy, fear, love, everything crossed his face at once. "Oh my God." "She's strong," Serena said, "like her mother." They stayed like that, Adrian's hand on her belly, fingers still intertwined, until Dr. Patel finished the exam and discreetly left them alone to clean up. Adrian stepped back, giving Serena space to sit up and wipe the gel off her stomach. She could feel him watching her, could sense the words he was holding back. "Thank you," he said finally, "for letting me be here. She's your daughter too. You should get to see her." "I know, but you didn't have to include me. After everything." His voice was rough. "It means more than I can say that you did." Serena pulled her shirt down, swung her legs off the table. "We're going to have to figure out how to do this, Adrian. How to be parents together even if we're not together. Might as well start now." "Is that what you want? To just be co-parents?" The question hung between them. Serena took her time answering because it mattered, and she wanted to get it right. "I don't know what I want yet," she said honestly. "I know I'm not ready to just pretend the last year didn't happen, but I also know that sitting at the beach with you didn't feel terrible, and having you here today felt right somehow. So maybe there's something between those two extremes that we can figure out." Adrian nodded slowly. "I can work with maybe." They left the office together. Adrian walked her to her car, opened the door for her, waited until she was settled before closing it. "Hey, Serena?" he called as she was about to start the engine. She rolled down the window. "Yeah?" "Would you have dinner with me? Not a date," he added quickly. "Just dinner. Two people who are having a baby together, trying to figure things out." Serena should have said no, should have maintained her boundaries, kept the distance she'd worked so hard to establish. But the look on his face when he'd seen their daughter on that screen kept replaying in her mind. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Dinner. Not a date." "Not a date," he agreed. "Friday night? I can pick you up at 7. I'll meet you there. Text me the restaurant." She drove away before she could change her mind, watching him in her rearview mirror until she turned the corner. Friday came faster than Serena expected. She changed clothes 3 times before settling on a simple dress that accommodated her belly without looking like a tent. Mira watched the fashion show with barely concealed amusement. "It's not a date," Serena insisted. "Right. That's why you've tried on half your wardrobe. I just want to look presentable." "You want to look good for him. It's okay to admit that." Serena sighed. "Fine. I want to look good. Happy? Ecstatic. Wear the blue dress. It makes your eyes pop." The restaurant Adrian had chosen was Italian, a small place in River North they used to go to before the divorce. Serena felt a pang when she walked in and saw the familiar exposed brick walls, the candlelit tables, the smell of garlic and wine. Adrian was already there, standing when he saw her approach. He wore dark jeans and a button-down no tie, casual but put together. His eyes tracked over her like he was memorizing details. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you. You clean up okay, too." They sat, ordered. The waiter brought bread and water, and they were left alone with each other and the weight of everything unsaid. "So," Adrian started. "So, this is awkward," Serena laughed despite herself. "Little bit, yeah. We used to be able to talk for hours. Remember? That first date lasted until the restaurant literally kicked us out." "I remember. You told me about your terrible college roommate who kept stealing your food. And you told me about backpacking through Europe after graduation and getting lost in Prague. Not lost, temporarily disoriented. You were lost for 6 hours, but I found my way eventually. That's what matters." Serena took a sip of water. "Why did you bring me here? To this restaurant specifically?" Adrian didn't pretend not to understand. "Because we were happy here once, before everything got complicated. I thought maybe being somewhere we had good memories would make this easier." "Does it?" "I don't know yet. Does it?" Serena looked around the restaurant, at the corner booth where they used to sit, at the painting of the Amalfi Coast they'd talked about visiting someday. "Maybe. It's not as painful as I thought it would be." Their food came. They ate and talked, carefully at first, then with increasing ease. They talked about the baby, about names they were considering. Serena had been thinking about Emma. Adrian liked Sophia. They debated middle names and family names and whether they wanted something classic or modern. "My mother keeps suggesting Catherine," Adrian said. "After her." "Of course she does. My mother wants Grace, after her grandmother. What do you want?" Serena thought about it. "Something that's ours. Not a family name, not something weighted with expectation. Just a name we both love." "Emma Sophia? Sophia Emma?" They tried both combinations, testing how they sounded. Neither was quite right yet, but they were getting closer. The conversation drifted to other topics: work, mutual friends, the house Adrian still lived in that was too big for one person. He didn't say it like a guilt trip, just a fact. Serena told him about living with Mira, about how her friend had been a lifeline through the pregnancy. "I owe her," Adrian said, "for taking care of you when I should have been." "You weren't exactly invited to." "I know. That's on me." They were circling around it, Serena realized, the real conversation they needed to have, the one about what had broken between them and whether it could be fixed. She decided to just dive in. "Why did you really walk away?" she asked. "And don't say it was about legacy or your father's expectations. That's the surface. I want to know what was underneath." Adrian set down his fork, took a breath. "I was scared. Terrified, actually. When Dr. Morrison said you couldn't have kids, it felt like the ground disappeared. Everything I'd built my identity on, being the Vale heir, continuing the family line, suddenly wasn't possible. And instead of dealing with that fear, instead of talking to you about it, I just shut down." "Why?" "Because admitting I was scared meant admitting I didn't have all the answers. Meant being vulnerable in a way I'd never learned how to be." He met her eyes. "My father raised me to see vulnerability as weakness, to always have control, always have a plan. When I didn't know how to fix the infertility thing, I fell back on what I knew. I created distance, made it a business decision instead of an emotional one. You made me feel like I was the problem. I know, and that's the part I'm most ashamed of. You were dealing with devastating news about your own body, grieving the future you'd imagined, and instead of supporting you, I made it about me, about what I was losing. I was selfish and cowardly, and I'm so sorry. Serena felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. I needed you to fight for us, to say that I mattered more than biological children. And you didn't. No, I didn't, because I was too busy protecting myself to see that I was destroying the only thing that actually mattered. Adrian's voice was thick. If I could go back, I'd do everything differently. I'd get a second opinion. I'd suggest therapy. I'd hold you while we both grieved, and then we'd figure out what came next together. But I can't go back. All I can do is try to be better now. How do I know you won't run again, the first time things get hard? You don't. I can't prove that in words, Serena. I can only show you through actions, through being there, consistently, even when it's uncomfortable, through choosing you and our daughter every single time. Serena twisted her napkin in her lap. I'm scared too, of letting you back in and getting hurt again, of our daughter watching her father disappoint her mother over and over. That's fair. I've earned that fear. Adrian leaned forward. But I'm also asking you to consider that people can change, that I have changed. Not because of the baby, but because losing you broke something in me that needed to break. I had to hit bottom before I could see what I was doing wrong. And what were you doing wrong? I was living someone else's life, following someone else's script. My father's vision of what a veil should be instead of figuring out what I actually wanted. He paused. You know what I've realized? The legacy that matters isn't bloodline or business empire. It's how you treat the people you love, whether you show up for them, whether you choose them even when it's hard. That's what I want to pass on to our daughter, not a name or money, but the example of what real love looks like. Serena felt something crack in her chest. The anger and hurt she'd been armoring herself with for months started to crumble, revealing the softer feelings underneath. The love that had never fully gone away, even when she'd tried to kill it. I still love you, she whispered. I've tried not to. It would be easier if I didn't, but I do. Adrian's hand crossed the table, palm up. An invitation, not a demand. Serena stared at it for a long moment before placing her hand in his. I love you too, he said. I never stopped. They sat like that, hands linked across the table, while the restaurant bustled around them. Serena felt the baby kick, wondered if somehow their daughter could sense the shift happening. I'm not ready to just jump back into being together, she said. I need time. I need to see that this is real, and not just about the baby. I can give you time as much as you need, and I need you to be patient with me. There are going to be days when I'm still angry, when I remember how bad it hurt and I pull away. I understand. Do you? Because it's not going to be easy, Adrian. We can't just pretend the divorce didn't happen. I don't want to pretend. I want to acknowledge what went wrong and build something better, something stronger. He squeezed her hand gently. Whatever pace you need, whatever boundaries you need, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. They finished dinner slowly, talking about logistics, how they'd handle the rest of the pregnancy, what to tell their families, where Serena would live once the baby came. Mira's guest room wasn't going to work long-term with an infant. You could move back to the house, Adrian suggested carefully. Not into our bedroom. They're guest rooms. You'd have your own space, but we'd be together for the baby. I don't know about that. Just think about it. The house has everything set up already. You'd be comfortable, and I could help with night feedings and diaper changes, co-parenting under the same roof. Serena could see the logic, even as her instinct was to refuse. But living with Mira wasn't sustainable much longer, and her own apartment was too small. The house would be practical, even if it came with emotional complications. I'll think about it, she said. Adrian walked her to her car again. They stood in the parking lot, neither quite ready for the evening to end. Can I see you again? He asked. Not just at doctor appointments, just to spend time together. Yeah, I'd like that. Good. That's good. He leaned in slightly and Serena's breath caught, but he just pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and sweet. Drive safe, he said. Serena got in her car feeling lighter than she had in months. She called Mira on the way home. How was not a date? It was good, really good. We talked, really talked. And I think maybe we're going to be okay. Not immediately, But eventually, she could hear Mira's smile through the phone. I'm proud of you for taking the chance. I haven't fully taken it yet, but I'm considering it. That's progress. 2 weeks later, Serena moved into the guest room at Adrian's house. Not a full reconciliation, she'd been clear about that with everyone. Just a practical arrangement that would make co-parenting easier. Her family had opinions, of course. Her mother thought she was being too forgiving. Her sister thought she was being too cautious. Mira told her to trust her gut. Her gut said this was right, even if her head still had doubts. Adrian helped her move her things, carrying boxes up the stairs despite her protests that he should hire movers. He'd prepared the guest room carefully. Fresh paint, new furniture, a reading chair by the window, her favorite flowers on the nightstand. I want you to be comfortable, he said. This is your space. I won't come in without permission. He kept his word. The first few days were awkward, both of them navigating the shared spaces carefully. Adrian cooked dinner most nights, simple things, nothing fancy. They ate together, talking about their days. After dinner, Serena would retreat to her room, and Adrian would disappear into his study or the den. Slowly, they found a rhythm. Adrian came to every doctor's appointment. They took childbirth classes together, Adrian earnestly taking notes while Serena tried not to laugh at his serious concentration. They assembled the crib together one Saturday, arguing good-naturedly about which piece went where while ignoring the instructions. This doesn't look right, Serena said, staring at the partially assembled disaster. It's fine. I'm following the diagram. You're not. That piece is upside down. It's not? Adrian checked. Okay, it's upside down. They dissolved into laughter, and for a moment it felt like old times, easy and light and right. The nursery came together slowly. Serena picked soft colors, sage green and cream, nothing too precious. Adrian hung artwork, whimsical prints of animals and stars. They shopped for baby clothes together, Adrian holding up tiny outfits with expressions that ranged from confused to delighted. She's going to be this small, he asked, staring at a newborn onesie. Smaller, probably. That's terrifying. Welcome to parenthood. At 36 weeks, Serena woke up at 2 a.m. with back pain. She tried to go back to sleep, but it persisted. Got worse. She was debating whether to wake Adrian when another pain hit, sharper this time. Not back pain, she realized. Contractions. She made it to Adrian's bedroom door and knocked. Adrian? He was there in seconds, wearing pajama pants and no shirt, hair disheveled. What's wrong? I think I'm in labor. Every trace of sleep vanished from his face. Okay. Hospital. We need to go to the hospital. I need to time them first. Make sure they're regular. Right, timing. I can do that. He fumbled for his phone, pulling up the contraction timer app they'd downloaded. Tell me when the next one starts. They timed contractions for the next hour, 5 minutes apart, lasting about a minute each. Real labor, not false alarm. Adrian helped her to the car, his hand shaking slightly. It's too early. You're only 36 weeks. That's full term. The baby will be fine. You're sure? The doctor said 36 weeks was safe. We're okay. He drove carefully, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers. They checked into the hospital at 4 a.m, were shown to a labor and delivery room. A nurse checked Serena's progress. 4 centimeters dilated, effaced, definitely in labor. Looks like you're having a baby today, the nurse said cheerfully. Adrian looked like he might pass out. Labor was long and hard, and nothing like the peaceful experience the childbirth class videos had suggested. Serena labored for hours, Adrian beside her the entire time. He held her hand through contractions, helped her breathe through the pain, wiped her forehead with a cool cloth. I can't do this, Serena gasped at one point, tears streaming down her face. You can. You're doing it. It hurts. I know. I'm sorry. I wish I could take it away. This is your fault. You did this to me. Adrian wisely didn't point out that biology was a joint effort. I'm sorry. You're doing amazing. 12 hours after they'd arrived at the hospital, with evening settling over the city, Serena was finally ready to push. Adrian stayed by her head, supporting her, whispering encouragement. One more push, the doctor said. Big one, Serena. You've got this. Serena gathered everything she had left and pushed, felt something shift and release. heard a sound that made her heart stop and restart simultaneously. A cry. Thin and wavering and absolutely perfect. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, which they'd already known but somehow sounded different now that she was here. Real and alive and theirs. The nurses cleaned her quickly and placed her on Serena's chest. She was tiny and wrinkled and covered in vernix, with a shock of dark hair and Adrian's nose. She stopped crying the moment she felt her mother's skin, eyes blinking open in unfocused wonder. "Hi, baby," Serena whispered. "We've been waiting for you." She looked up and saw Adrian crying openly, not bothering to hide it. He was staring at their daughter like she'd hung the moon personally. "She's perfect," he said, voice breaking. "Serena, she's perfect. Do you want to hold her?" Adrian looked terrified. "I don't know how." The nurse helped him, showing him how to support the head, where to put his hands. Adrian held their daughter with the kind of careful reverence usually reserved for priceless artifacts. She fit in his arms perfectly, so small he could cradle her with one hand supporting her whole body. "Hi, Sophia," he whispered, and Serena's heart clenched because they'd settled on the name just yesterday. Sophia Emma Vale. "I'm your dad. I know I'm going to mess up sometimes, but I promise I'm going to try my best. I'm going to be here for you. Always." Sophia made a small sound and Adrian looked up at Serena with wonder written all over his face. "We made her," he said. "We made this perfect little person." "We did." The first few days in the hospital passed in a blur of feedings and diaper changes and trying to figure out what each different cry meant. Adrian barely left except to grab clothes and supplies from the house. He slept in the chair by Serena's bed, looking wildly uncomfortable but refusing to go home. "You should sleep in a real bed," Serena said on the second night. "I'm fine here." "You're going to destroy your back." "I don't care. I want to be here with you and Sophia." Serena felt something warm spread through her chest. "Okay, stay." They brought Sophia home on a sunny afternoon, both of them terrified and elated in equal measure. Adrian drove 5 miles under the speed limit, checking the rearview mirror every 30 seconds to make sure Sophia was still breathing in her car seat. "She's fine," Serena said. "I know, I just want to make sure." At home, they settled Sophia into her crib, after laying her down gently, then checking she was breathing, then checking again. Adrian stood over the crib for a full 5 minutes, just watching her sleep. "She's so small," he whispered. "I know. What if we break her?" "We won't. We'll figure it out." And they did figure it out through trial and error and exhaustion. Late-night feedings, where they took turns walking the floor with a fussy baby. Diaper changes that somehow always involved getting peed on. The first real smile that made every sleepless night worth it. They figured out how to be parents, but more than that, they figured out how to be a team again. It happened gradually. Small moments that accumulated into something bigger. Adrian bringing Serena coffee in the morning without being asked. Serena trusting him to handle bath time alone. Both of them collapsing on the couch after finally getting Sophia down for the night, too tired to maintain the careful boundaries they'd established. One night, 3 weeks after bringing Sophia home, Serena fell asleep on the couch during a late-night feeding. When she woke up, she was in her bed, still dressed but tucked in carefully. Adrian must have carried her. The baby monitor showed Sophia sleeping peacefully in the nursery. Serena got up and found Adrian in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair with their daughter asleep on his chest. He had one hand supporting her, the other holding a book he was reading quietly by the nightlight's glow. "You should be sleeping," Serena whispered. Adrian looked up. She was fussy, didn't want to wake you. "How long have you been up?" "Couple hours." Serena moved closer, looking at Sophia's peaceful face. "She likes sleeping on you." "I like it too." Adrian smiled slightly. "Never thought I'd be the kind of guy who got emotional over a baby sleeping on his chest, but here we are." "You're a good dad." "I'm trying to be. I want to give her everything, not just money or things, but time, presence, the feeling of being loved unconditionally." He paused. "The things I didn't always get from my own father." Serena sat down on the ottoman beside the rocking chair. "You're breaking the cycle." "Trying to, with both of you." He met her eyes. "Serena, I know we're taking things slow. I respect that. But I need you to know that these last few weeks, being here with you and Sophia, watching you be an incredible mother, falling asleep on the couch together at 3 in the morning because we're both too tired to move, this is everything I want. You're everything I want. Adrian, I'm not asking for an answer right now. I just needed to say it. You and Sophia are my family. Not because of bloodline or legacy or any of that bullshit I used to think mattered. Because you're the people I want to come home to, the people I want to build a life with. Serena felt tears welling up. The good kind this time. I want that too. I've wanted it for a while, but I was scared to admit it. Yeah? Yeah? You've shown me you've changed, Adrian. Through actions, not just words. The way you show up for feedings, the way you look at Sophia, the way you've been patient with me even when I know you wanted to push for more. Adrian shifted carefully, not wanting to wake the baby. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm ready to try again, really try, not just cohabitate for the baby's sake. You're sure? Because I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm sure. I love you. I never stopped. And I think we've learned enough from our mistakes to not make them again. Come here. Serena leaned in. Adrian kissed her softly, mindful of the sleeping baby between them. It was gentle and sweet, and tasted like coming home. Sophia chose that moment to wake up with an indignant squawk, and they both laughed. Excellent timing, kid, Adrian said. Serena took the baby, settling her for a feeding, while Adrian watched with that expression she was getting used to. Pure love mixed with wonder that this was his life now. They didn't move back into the master bedroom together right away. It took another month of gradually blurring the boundaries between Adrian's space and Serena's space until there were no boundaries at all. One night, Serena just didn't go to the guest room after putting Sophia down. She crawled into Adrian's bed instead, and he held her while they both fell asleep within minutes. It became routine after that, falling asleep together, waking up to Sophia's cries, taking turns getting up, being a real family. At Sophia's 2-month checkup, Doctor Patel asked how they were adjusting to parenthood. It's exhausting and terrifying and the best thing that ever happened to us, Serena said. That sounds about right. Dr. Patel smiled. And how are you two doing? Together? Adrian and Serena looked at each other. Good, they said in unison and meant it. Glad to hear it. A lot of couples struggle after a baby. You two seem to have figured it out. What they'd figured out, Serena thought, was that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about showing up every day, about choosing each other through the hard parts, about building something together that was stronger than what you could build alone. She took Adrian's hand and squeezed. On a crisp October afternoon when Sophia was 4 months old and starting to laugh at everything, Adrian asked Serena to marry him again. They were at the park, Sophia bundled in her stroller, enjoying the fall colors. Adrian had been quiet all morning, nervous in a way that Serena had learned to recognize. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing's wrong. I have something to ask you. He pulled out a small box, and Serena's breath caught. I know we're already technically married, well, divorced and then undivorced in every way except legally, but I want to do this right. He opened the box to reveal a simple band, different from the elaborate engagement ring he'd given her the first time. More understated, more them. Serena Cross, will you marry me? Again? For real this time, with both of us knowing exactly what we're committing to? Serena looked at the ring, then at Adrian, then at Sophia sleeping peacefully in her stroller. Their little family, imperfect and hard-won and absolutely worth every painful step it had taken to get here. Yes, she said. Absolutely yes. They got married on a Saturday in November, a small ceremony in the backyard of the house that was now fully theirs, just immediate family and close friends. Mira stood as Serena's maid of honor, holding Sophia during the vows. Marcus was Adrian's best man, making a speech that made everyone cry and laugh in equal measure. Thomas Vale showed up, which surprised Adrian. His father pulled him aside before the ceremony. I was wrong, Thomas said without preamble. About what matters, about legacy. Your mother pointed out that I was so focused on bloodline that I almost cost you the only thing worth passing on. What's that? Love. The ability to choose it even when it's hard. To fight for it. Thomas glanced at Serena across the yard, beautiful in a simple dress, holding their granddaughter. That little girl is going to grow up watching how you and Serena treat each other. That's the legacy that matters, not the veil name or the business. How you love. That's what she'll remember. Adrian felt his throat tighten. Thanks, Dad. Don't thank me. I nearly ruined everything with my advice. Just promise me you'll do better. Be better than I was. I promise. The ceremony was simple. They'd written their own vows. Adrian went first. Serena, I loved you from the moment you told me I was full of myself at that first gala. I loved you when we were happy, and when things got hard. I loved you when I walked away, even though I convinced myself I didn't. And I love you now, standing here with our daughter, getting a second chance I know I don't deserve. I promise to choose you every day, to fight for us when things get difficult, to remember that you and Sophia are my real legacy, not some name or business empire, to be the man you see when you look at me instead of the one my fear tried to make me. Serena was crying before he finished. She took a breath, steadied herself. Adrian, you broke my heart, but you also showed me that broken things can be fixed if both people are willing to do the work. You've proven that people can change, that second chances aren't just romantic nonsense, but real possibilities. You've shown up every day through sleepless nights and exhaustion and all the unglamorous parts of new parenthood. You've chosen me and Sophia consistently, without reservation. That's the Adrian I'm marrying today. Not the scared man who walked away, but the brave one who came back and fought to rebuild what we'd lost. I love you. I choose you. Today and every day after. They exchanged rings, kissed while their friends and family applauded. Sophia woke up and started crying, and they both laughed through their tears. The reception was in the backyard, casual and warm. They danced their first dance with Sophia between them, her little hands waving in delight at the music. Catherine Vale danced with her granddaughter, Thomas, standing off to the side with an expression that might have been pride or might have been something softer. Serena's mother pulled her aside at one point. I'm proud of you for taking the risk. Thanks, Mom. Marriage is hard. It's going to keep being hard. But if you're both willing to work at it, it's worth it. I know. We know. As the evening wound down, Adrian and Serena stood in the backyard watching their guests. Sophia was asleep in Adrian's arms, exhausted from being passed around all day. We did it, Serena said quietly. We did. Built something better than what we had before. Think we can keep it this time? Adrian kissed her temple. I know we can. We've already survived the worst. Everything else is just details. Serena leaned against him, careful not to wake the baby. Around them, the house glowed with warm light. Inside were all their things mixed together. Her books on his shelves, his coffee maker next to her tea collection, Sophia's toys scattered across the living room floor. Evidence of a life built together, messy and real and completely theirs. They'd lost each other once, had grieved what they thought was impossible, had hurt each other and themselves in the process. But they'd found their way back, not to who they used to be, but to who they could become together. Stronger, wiser, ready to face whatever came next as a team. Sophia stirred, made a small sound. Adrian rocked her gently, and she settled back into sleep. Come on, Serena said. Let's go inside. Our family is waiting. And they did, together. Finally, permanently, completely together. The way they were always meant to be.